Parking. Everyone pays. Not everyone benefits. Is there really no such thing as free parking? No. A driver may not pay directly, but the land has value. Parking must be built, maintained, and enforced. It also displaces other uses, such as a wider sidewalk, trees, a bus lane, a loading zone, bicycle parking, seating, or safer visibility at a crossing. But people need somewhere to leave their cars. Some parking is necessary. The policy question is how much, where, for whom, and at whose expense. How much space does one car actually use? A typical car occupies roughly 8 square meters. Using 450,000 cars as an illustration, their bodies alone would cover about 3.65 square kilometers. That is before adding gaps, access, and room to maneuver. The exact number of cars may change, but Yerevan is not producing more land. Who pays for free curb parking? Municipal budgets, taxpayers, public transport passengers delayed in traffic, pedestrians pushed onto narrower sidewalks, businesses losing loading space, residents losing trees or public space. Who benefits financially? Fuel suppliers, vehicle importers, dealers, lenders, insurers, repair and car service businesses. Underpriced parking lowers the practical cost of car ownership and supports the wider car economy. Armenia has already seen how quickly incentives can expand that economy. The car rush is a good example. What caused it? When Armenia joined the Eurasian Economic Union, it received a 5-year transition period. Vehicles could continue to be imported under Armenia's existing terms until January 2020. As the window began to close, reported vehicle imports rose from about 64,000 in 2018 to 189,000 in 2019. Many of those vehicles were re-exported. Correct, they did not all remain in Armenia, but the transition created importing networks, commercial knowledge, and a habit of buying and trading used cars. Friends and relatives abroad were recruited to find, buy, and ship vehicles. And the cars that stayed required roads, parking, and fuel. Imported fuel. Armenia already depended on imported fossil fuels. Expanding car dependence locked more everyday mobility into that external dependency. So customs policy became transport and energy policy, and eventually waste policy. A repaired salvage vehicle may leave the road without leaving the land. It can remain in a yard or dismantling site while its plastic, rubber, fluids, batteries, and electronics require treatment. That is another discussion, a major one. We should return to it separately. Why is parking reform politically difficult? Because the loss is concentrated and visible. A driver losing one familiar space complains immediately. As Jeanette Sedek-Khan calls it, taking away a parking space is like taking away someone's firstborn. Meanwhile, thousands of bus passengers saving time may say nothing. So the loudest voices can appear to represent everyone. That is pluralistic ignorance. A vocal minority is mistaken for the majority, while people who might benefit remain silent or unorganized. Then political courage declines, and the status quo wins. Isn't doing nothing politically neutral? No. Keeping the existing allocation is also a decision. It means continuing to prioritize the current users of that space. Car enthusiasts often defend cars as necessary for safety and emergencies. But look inside Yerevan's residential yards and narrow streets. Many are packed so tightly with parked cars that ambulances and fire engines may struggle to enter. So private vehicle storage can obstruct the emergency access used to defend it. Exactly. Residents collectively carry the risk, yet the obstruction has become so normal that almost no one thinks to complain. These crowded inner yards also change how people judge travel time. Someone may spend 5 or 10 minutes maneuvering out of the parking maze to make a trip that could be walked in 10 or 15 minutes. But the car still feels faster. Because people often compare only the driving portion with the entire walk. They exclude the time spent getting out, circulating, and parking. Door to door, the advantage may disappear. This is what Copenhagen-based urban designer Mikael Colville Andersen calls the arrogance of space? Yes, he coined the term in 2012. Space occupied by cars is treated as natural and untouchable. Returning even a small part of it to pedestrians, public transport, trees, or cycling is presented as an attack. But Yerevan does charge for some curb parking, the red lines. Yes. The municipal red line system began operating in the early 2010s. For years, 12,000 drams a year, roughly $30, allowed a vehicle to use the paid zones across Kentron and Arabkir. Was that really parking management? At that price, it worked less like management of scarce public land and more like a cheap annual entitlement to search for a space. It did not guarantee one. Then the municipality raised the price. In 2024, the annual rate became 160,000 drams in Central Zone A and 24,000 drams in Zone B. Annual pass purchases fell sharply, and the change created some immediate relief. So pricing worked. It changed behavior, but the increase was challenged and has spent years in court. One price change cannot repair an entire parking system. At least the remaining parking is organized as one coherent system? No. Even the geometry reveals the priorities. Some municipal curb calculations allocate about 7.5 meters to one parallel parked car. National rules restrict parking within 15 meters of a public transport stop and 5 meters of an intersection edge. What does that comparison tell us? A bus stop may serve hundreds of people. A parked car may serve one household, yet the geometry can treat private storage generously while protecting public transport, visibility, and safe turning through relatively small clearances. Who is responsible for the rest of the city beyond the red lines? Authority is fragmented. The municipality manages the paid red line zones. Outside them, enforcement of illegal parking belongs largely to the National Patrol Service under the Ministry of Internal Affairs. In November 2025, the Prime Minister called Yerevan's congestion situation critical. A working group was formed. Yes, but a realist knows that a working group can sometimes become a parking space for responsibility. Without clear authority, deadlines, and accountable leadership, coordination can become a delay. Is congestion therefore only a municipal problem? No. The national government is not a spectator. The National Assembly sets parts of the legal framework. The government sets national traffic rules. The Ministry of Internal Affairs controls major enforcement functions. The municipality holds only some of the levers. So responsibility is shared. Shared responsibility is usually an oxymoron in government. Authority can be divided, but responsibility must be assigned. Otherwise, everyone participates and nobody is accountable. Then who is responsible? Each institution is responsible for the powers it holds. The municipality must use its powers. But the Prime Minister, government, and National Assembly cannot demand municipal results while retaining legal and enforcement powers needed to produce those results. So the city manages a parking fee, but not the whole parking environment. Exactly. Pricing, street design, enforcement, public transport, and institutional authority must work together. Are these intentional policy flaws or simple oversight? Some are deliberate, some are inherited, some are ignored, but when the rules and institutions repeatedly produce the same outcome, it is system design. Ignorance does not make it neutral. What would responsible parking policy look like? Price scarce spaces, protect accessible parking, create loading zones, use resident permits where appropriate, enforce turnover, and stop allowing vehicles to block sidewalks and crossings. Parking should also be flexible. The same curb can serve deliveries in the morning, buses during peak hours, short visits during the day, and residents at night. What about pocket parking? I seem to see a new pocket being cut into a sidewalk every day. Pocket parking may look more orderly, but if it takes space from pedestrians, it simply formalizes the same problem. Every entrance creates another place where vehicles cross the pedestrian path. It can interrupt walking continuity, reduce visibility, and create conflict. Pocket parking should be used only where it does not compromise sidewalk width, accessibility, or safety. And should some parking spaces simply be removed?
Yes.
Where another use produces greater public value. First of all, around schools and kindergartens, then wherever parking obstructs safety, accessibility, or public transport. School zones are a major topic on their own. They are. For now, it is enough to say that child safety should come before vehicle storage. That still leaves the usual question. Where will the cars go? Some will use garages or paid spaces. Some will park farther away. Some trips will shift to public transport, walking, cycling, or shared vehicles. And let's not forget about demand evaporation. What is that? When parking or road capacity is reduced, not all the former demand simply moves to the next street. People adapt. They change their travel time, destination, route, or mode. Some combine trips. Some decide not to drive at all. We see this in many cities around the world, and recently we have seen the same basic adjustment in neighboring Tbilisi, a city much closer to us culturally and institutionally. Tbilisi introduced zonal parking and reallocated road space to public transport despite strong resistance. The reforms were not perfect, but travel patterns adapted and the city did not collapse. Yet people usually predict collapse. They do, but travel demand responds to conditions. It is not a fixed quantity that must always be accommodated. And if there still isn't enough space for every car, then policy has to acknowledge the physical limit. A city cannot promise unlimited private vehicle storage on finite public land. So free parking is not free. Everyone pays. Not everyone benefits.